Wow, it's time for another show full of tips and ideas from the sales growth leadership expert, Dean Akers. Known for his experience in hyper-growing companies and creating cultures for high-performance teams, here's Dean.
Well, welcome to your Sales and Leadership Ninja Show. I'm your head ninja, Dean Akers. Every week we bring you a rant to stimulate you in your thinking of sales and or leadership. This week's going to be a special one. I've met so many people over my career, quite frankly, that really suffer from self-talk. As a matter of fact, today we're going to talk about the book, and we're going to talk about your ability to get this book at no charge. But it's a book I wrote about a year ago, Self-Talk, Think Like a Child. I'm going to share some ideas today that can really help you. In previous shows, we've talked about this disease of self-talk and how it influences your decisions and thoughts. So when I visit with people, we always find their own self-talk has been their limits to them. In other words, where they could go, or the size of their business, or their market, or their sales success, or their leadership success, or their business success. And some of the self-talks I'll hear is, we're not big enough to handle them. So I'll ask somebody, why aren't you going after this account? And they'll say to me, well, we're not big enough to handle them. And I go, so that's what they told you? No, we just know. How do you know? Well, Dean, just trust me, we know. No, I don't trust you, and it's not that I don't like you. I'm here to help you. But how do you know? And we joke because you could go after the biggest client and you be in a business where you could just get some ancillary business, and they could in turn become your biggest client. I had a client years ago. He would not buy our primary stuff, and everybody goes, he won't buy what you sell. And he ended up being my biggest client, and he never bought anything that was a primary product that our company sold. He bought all the secondary stuff that nobody thought anybody bought, and he bought a lot of it, and he was my number one client. So had I just self-talked it, and to just give you the magnitude, he was a World War II bomber pilot in the Japanese theater, and we sold Japanese equipment. So there was just no way he would buy from me. At least that's what he told me. I mean, subsequently after years he did, but he bought all kinds of other stuff from me. So when you say, well, we're just not big enough to handle them, that doesn't mean you don't call on them or go after them. It's self-talk. Tell yourself, hey, that's a good client. They'll pay me well. I can get part of their business, and they'll help me grow my company. So that's one. No one is hiring. Oh my God, I've heard that. And I heard that just this past week, how tough it is to find a job. We're at 3.5% unemployment in the Tampa Bay area, and probably in the state of Florida, and 4% is statistical 100% employment. And with 100% employment, that means if you can fog a mirror, in theory, you should be able to get a job. But if you're sitting around waiting for somebody through Indeed or one of the job searches, or waiting for a headhunter, or going through HR, you're going to find it. So this week on my Adjunct CEO Hour, which we have a podcast on that on the networks, we had Ron Laker, and he shared the story, and I just got to tell it. So he played D1 basketball for Xavier up in Indiana. So when he got done with college, he wanted to get a job, and everybody told him a great place to work was Clairol. And Clairol was a woman's products, hair products, and different things, and he wanted to go to work there. So they had already interviewed across the campus, had already filled all the positions. There were no more opportunities. Now, Ron could have been like a lot of us and said, there's no job there. But no, he went and met with the sales manager, made an appointment. The sales manager interviewed him, said, hey, we're not hiring. He said, you're going to interview me for 15 minutes, and I want you to tell me what you do and don't like about me. So he went through the interview, and the guy goes, well, I kind of like you. We'll keep you in our file. He goes, no, I want to know who, if you like me, you would tell them that you like me, and they may say, hey, come in and interview. So he said, well, the vice president of blah, blah, blah. And he said, is he here today? He goes, yeah, but he won't see you. I said, just give me 15 minutes. Go ask him. Well, the vice president met him. And I may be embellishing this if you listen to the podcast, a little bit different, but at the end of the day, the vice president spent 15, 20 minutes with him, and Ron said, would you hire me? He goes, well, I got to talk to some folks and stuff. And he said, so you're not the guy that can make that decision. He says, well, I can make that decision, but I usually like to run it by one of my confidants. And he said, well, who's that? And he said, that's my administrative assistant. She's been with me for years. She really knows me. She knows what we're looking for, and I just want to run it by her. He says, can I meet her? Well, okay. Give me 15 minutes with her. So Ron went and had 15 minutes with the vice president's administrative assistant. She walked him back into the office and looked at the vice president and said, you need to hire this man right now. And he got the job right now. So if he had allowed self-talk to tell him, oh, well, I'm not going to get the job, or they're booked up, they've hired every position, he wouldn't have gotten the job. You think he got the job also because he was that persistent? I would say yes. I would say that had a lot of impact on it. Then I'll meet people and they'll go, the market's not that large, or all this stuff about the market. And they talk in generalizations about the market. I had one group recently talk about generalizations about the market, and we took their customer base and we looked at who they had, and we were to determine that it was almost $100 million worth of business within 2 miles of their office that they didn't even call on, that we could identify by name that they never met and or called on. So the markets are huge. Most of us that act like we're in a competitive environment and all this other craziness is our own self-talk. Get over it. Let it go. Go out there. Meet the customer. Have the customer want to do business with you. Eliminate the self-talk. Be like a child. Any of you that are out watching or listening, if you have children and you say no to them, do they simply go, okay, mom, dad, especially when they're young kids, do they just walk back and sit on the couch? No, they don't let up. And guess what? They generally don't let up till what? Till you give them a cookie. So think like a child. Think like a child. Self-talk. The market's not that large. We've talked about that. They buy from national companies, not one our size. That's my best one. People go, oh, well, they only buy from the big guys. Really? Really? You got to get them convinced that A, you can service them as well. B, they want to do business with you. And C, your size is irrelevant. And guess what? When somebody wants to do business with you, they will figure out how to make you the size you need to be to fulfill their requirements to be one of their vendors and do business with you. Again, it's self-talk. When you say that, you are self-talking. You have to take that self-talk, reframe it, and look at how you can overcome it. I had one recently, and I've heard this years. And I was at a recent meeting, and we were talking about how business could get tough because the birth rate had just dropped. Well, first off, if the birth rate, which it did drop, but in fact it dropped this past year to less than it had dropped in the whole Gen X generation, but it did drop down. And the reality is this particular industry won't be affected for 18 more years. And if you look at the drop and you look at the growth and you look at the statistical probabilities that that drop is an aberration, which we'll find out over the next 3 to 4 years, to in fact say that and to try to forecast how that's going to impact you 18 years from now is crazy, because there's so many things and variables that are going to come into play in 18 years that you haven't even seen or heard about today. So that's another thing where self-talk gets everybody going, oh, what are we going to do? So facts to help. So as you review your business, look at all the facts. When somebody says, oh, there's a boatload of these, determine what boatload means. When people say birth rates dropped, go back and track birth rates for the last 30, 40, 50 years, and you'll see interesting dynamics there that will give you satisfaction. And then go back and look at trends of when births will happen based on parental and marriage rates. Then find a mentor. Find someone that can hold you accountable. It could be somebody, one of your best friends. It could be a paid coach. It could be a roundtable group. It could be anything, but find a mentor. And don't fight them. Let them challenge you. Let them keep you on track. Make them hold you accountable. Then work on avoiding statements that have finite endings without thoughts of the impacts. Well, we're just not big enough. That has a finite ending that has no thought of impact. You're not big enough for what? They only buy from the big guys. What's the definition of a big guy? I had a client the other day, they said, well, they only want to do business with big business. So did you ask them their definition of big business? Well, no. They just said, we're not a big business. Okay, are we not a big business by $100? Or are we not a big business by $400 million? We got to ask them. We can't avoid these. We got to avoid people making statements to us and or us making statements that create finite endings without understanding the thoughts of the impacts and facts. And then lastly, just keep asking. Act like your children. If you have children, ask. Why can't you do it? Why can't you buy from me? Why? And don't allow them to pigeonhole you. Had Ron Laker allowed that first interview to go without closure, he may have never gotten that great job at Clairol. But he stuck with it, and he kept asking, and finally they said, you're hired. So I hope you enjoy the fact that self-talk is something you want to work on this week. So your challenge this week is to go out and even record yourself and see if you hear yourself talking yourself out of a sale. My ninjas record it, and I can tell you, most of the recordings, when we go back and listen to them, we can hear them puking and talking themselves right out of the sale with self-talk. And also, to help everybody that listened to this show today, this is a special offer from me to you, from your head ninja to you. If you want a copy of Self-Talk, Think Like a Child, it's available on Barnes & Noble. It's available on Amazon. You can order it and buy it. That's great. But if you want a copy, I will mail you a free copy if you just email me at help@adjunctceo.com. You heard that right. help@adjunctceo.com. And I want you just to mail it to me. Email me and say, I want a copy of Self-Talk, Dean. I'm ready to get rid of my own self-talk. And I'll send that in the mail to you. So put your address and everything on it. So again, your charge this week, eliminate the self-talk. Practice, not self-talking. And remember to reach out to me at help@adjunctceo.com for the free book. So until I talk to you next week, this week, no more self-talk.
We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Subscribe today to our podcast and send questions or thoughts to help@deanakers.com. Also, visit us at www.deanakers.com to listen to prior shows and view helpful videos. Also, great tips to download. Thanks again. See you next week.